My name is Maira Kalman, and I am a writer and illustrator and sometime designer. I never studied anything, so hurrah for that, and I never studied illustration, and I never, it's always the old line, I never knew what I was supposed to know, so not knowing is a beautiful thing. And it always seemed to me that if the work didn't incorporate my life in a way that made sense for me, then I was bored. So really not being bored is a great motivator of how to look at working and say, well, what's really interesting about this? And it's not always that interesting, but so the things that happen are funny to me, and I think, well, why wouldn't I put that in my work? Sometimes I do a project and some of the clients say, is this the best she can do? I mean, is this what she wants to do? The nature of not knowing stuff still is really important for me. So I certainly have gotten better in my technique and more proficient. But I really don't want to be on one level I don't want to be too good, meaning that will never be a problem, I'll never be too good, but that I would not lose that sense of naivete and that it would feel real, as opposed to trying to be naive. Even though I'm more serious in my profession, I still have a sense of joy and spontaneity, I hope, in most of the work. The working day is getting up really happily with a cup of coffee and reading the paper. And then if I have a deadline, which is always very good for focusing the day, then I go to my studio and I paint. And I just stay there and paint all day long, and I listen to music all day long. And now I'm listening to the entire series of Glenn Gould recordings, which my children gave me. So it's, I don't know, 75 CDs from the beginning to the end. So I listen to music and I paint. And then I get to walk around the city, and I've been trying to take a 3:30 walk every day because that's what Kant did every day of his life. And I thought, if it's good enough for Kant, it's good enough for me. But there's something nice about, and I'm doing that with my students, that they take a walk every day at 3:30, and then you document what happened to you during your walk, a solitary walk. So I spend a lot of time alone, a tremendous amount of time alone, as do most artists. And then there's going to museums and traveling and sometimes working with people on other assignments. But basically, it's a very simple day, and I get really excited if I have to go to the post office and mail a letter, and that's like a big event. Or if I have to buy some lemons, it's like, wow, this is really exciting. So there's nothing. Actually, the duller the day, the happier I am in a way, and then I can work, and I go buy a lot of books. I think my biggest pleasure is to go to the Strand bookstore, which is a few blocks away, and just get, When I did this piece, for instance, on Obama for my Times column, and the way that everybody lives, you go someplace and then 3 things happen to you on the way to where you're going, and then you notice somebody with amazing shoes, and then you notice, whatever, a dog that looks great, and then you have a conversation with somebody that you didn't know you were going to have a conversation with. And so those are the things that are really interesting to me. The point of the story is never interesting. The only thing that's interesting are all the little things that happen to a person in between the things that you think you're supposed to be doing. So going down to Washington, I was able to stop at a rest stop in the highway and take a photo of the vase of flowers in the ladies' room, because it was so enchanting. And I thought, well, of course this is as important as being at the inauguration. I mean, this is it. So I'm able to tell that story without being fixed on one point, because to me that's deadly. And to digress is the whole point of the story. So I choose the things that I love and I put them in the story. My first column in the Times was for a year, and it came out once a month, and it was called The Principles of Uncertainty. Yeah. This new column is also going to be for a year, and it'll be about the American government, which is a much drier, on one level you think, oh God, how am I going to write about this for a year? Who cares? On the other hand, it's an incredibly important and alive topic right now, especially with having somebody like Obama as the president, and there's great hallelujah and celebration. You say, okay, what is the nature of this? So I'm going to go hopefully to the White House, and I'm going to the Supreme Court in a few days to listen to them argue and just think about history and how this country started, things I never cared about before. So we'll see what happens. Well, when I was writing, I decided that my writing was really terrible, and which is something that every young writer feels part of the time. And I thought I would try telling my stories in drawing, because I wasn't afraid of it the way that I was afraid of writing. And I said, well, I said my sister could do it. How hard could it be? And that was the joke that I always said. And so I started drawing, not knowing what the rules are, and just having fun. Mm-hmm. So having fun was such a delightful relief after not having fun with writing.
So it was more of a playground.
It was more just playing, and I'll just kind of play around. It'll be cartoony, and it was the time of the new wave drawings. It allowed for primitivism and naivete, and there was a whole explosion of that kind of narrative illustration. So I was really at the right place at the right time, in a way. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do children's books. I also saw myself as Pippi Longstocking. That persona was dazzling to me. That's the kind of girl I want to be, just unafraid and a tomboy and crazy and funny. And I loved the illustrations. I loved the whole thing. So Pippi Longstocking was very inspiring. And when you read a book, especially as a little girl, when you read a book about a girl who's not afraid of things and who's so in control and so dazzling, you think, well, this is, that's rare, especially in those days. No, actually, I'm thinking about, the book Fireboat, which was about 9/11 and a fireboat that fought the fires. And there, I'm saying to them, a lot of people died, and that's very specific, and literally a lot of people died. But then there is redemption and hope, and this is what happened. Well, I guess the reader is me, me, the child or the adult in me, and I think that anybody who's writing children's books is writing also for adults. Otherwise, and I don't mean in a cynical way that that the children shouldn't get it and it's really only for adults, but that the story, the dialogue that you have with anybody is basic. I really talk to children in a very similar way that I talk to adults. Though probably we don't have to keep a conversation going as long with children as with adults. You can kind of break it off or not follow the rules. But I think that if you're using humor and using just what you see and how you feel, it's not that different. It's a feeling of how it makes sense to live life, which is tragedy will hit everybody, and I can't imagine a life that doesn't include tragedy. So the question is not avoiding tragedy, the question is how do you deal with it? And that's the question that everybody has to deal with, and the notion of mortality and the notion of loss. And I think that and then you can have a choice, if one has a choice in these things, and who knows what that really is, but I choose to be optimistic, or my nature is optimistic, and I believe that if you feel that things can work out in some way, whatever that means, work out, or you believe in the essential goodness of people, one hopes. And I guess I would rather believe that than believe the opposite. Then you see what happens. So, but especially if you don't have a sense of humor, you don't have a sense of optimism, you're in bad shape in this world. So that's one thing that I do want to say to kids, that you're allowed to kid around. I mean, not allowed to, you must. I was fortunate that my mother and my parents never told me what to do. But I was married to somebody who was incredibly forceful and incredibly productive. And we met when we were 18, so we were the same age, but Tibor was somebody who couldn't stand non-productivity, and so he was always pushing me to do more and to be productive and to do books. Well, if you can do one book a year, why can't you do 2 books a year? And if you could do 2 books, why not 4 books? And so he was somebody who there was no limit to productivity, and living with somebody like that, who was fearless, was a huge influence on me, of course. And though we worked together and developed a partnership, But it was his fearlessness that made me be able to take it out into the public as opposed to keep it private. So I was lucky to have him. Well, when I was about 22 or so, I think, I went to a South American psychic who came to New York, and I had to fast, and I had to meditate, and I think I said couldn't wear any jewelry. So there was a kind of coming to him in a very, in a very vulnerable and clear state. And he had a translator, so he was telling me in Spanish, and then there was a translator, and it was all very mystical and ethereal, and just the right thing for the early 70s, the way. And I think I told him I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw, I wanted to write, I wasn't sure. And he, during the course of what he said to me, he said, "You must put yourself in a prison, but it will be a prison for your own happiness." And when he said that, those sentences, which I can still utter today as clearly as when I heard them then, 40 years later, I thought, this is extraordinary. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to be very specific. I needed to sit down and make a portfolio, be very literal about what he said, and put myself in a schedule that gave me the framework to feel like I was in the real world as opposed to in some dream world, which I easily go to. So it's important to have an anchor in the real world to be productive and to not go crazy. So he told me the right thing at the right time, and I was able to do that. So I started to work in a real way, and all the other forces were there to help me work. You don't want to give advice because everybody has to have happen in their life what happens in their life. On the other hand, sometimes somebody can say one little sentence to you and it completely inspires the rest of your existence. You don't even know why. Somebody said, "Oh, you should walk slower." Oh my God, I should walk slower. And then that changes your whole life. So you don't ever know where wisdom is going to come from. It isn't in the stars. That what it is about going to sit down and work. And that when you hear that, and when you say, okay, it's not about becoming some kind of amazing thing in a minute, it's about the process of it, then it's also, it puts you in a better place than trying to have to achieve something grand, Go for a walk at 3:30 every day. That'll help. Oh my God, I'm only thinking about, run as fast as you can, and, take up baking or something. I think, well, first of all, they should read, all illustrators should read a lot and listen to music a lot and look at architecture and do everything but look at illustration a lot, which is probably what people do. And then I think that I would say to somebody, you'll find out what you want to do because you'll either do it or you won't do it. Basically, that's the way it works. You either will put in the time and you will stay and you do love it, or you'll say, this isn't for me, and you'll give it up. So it'll be pretty obvious to somebody what to do, which is keep working. That's the only thing you can do, and then hope for the best.